Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal talk. Huge game for CF Montreal last night when they played host to Houston. They were down, and in the final seconds of the game, Lassi Lapalainen tied the game at 1. It could be a very critical point if Montreal is to make the play-in. They hang on to the 9th and final spot of that play-in. 2 games to go. They play versus Portland, and they finish their season in Columbus. Will this team make the playoffs? And drama, you wanted it, you got it. We've been telling you here on the Sick Podcast since at least the 5th of September when we told you that Victor Wanyama questioned the tactics and strategy and style of play of coach Hernan Losada, who didn't like it. And coincidentally, Victor Wanyama has been in the doghouse for the last 3 months. As a matter of fact, I think he started only 1 game during that span of close to 3 months. We're going to discuss it. Why? Because yesterday on social media, Victor Wanyama's wife took to social media and she aired her dirty laundry. We'll discuss it. We'll discuss all of that, everything. CF Montreal coming up with Jeremy Filosa of 98.5 FM and EMFC Radio and Sofiane Benzaza of Couscous Piri Piri. We are live on YouTube right now and on SickPod CFMTL on Twitter and on Facebook. I'm Marinaro.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. CF Montreal Talk.
Here's the chance. They've got the goal. Absolutely incredible. Cameron Porter delivers the goal to send Montreal Impact into the CONCACAF Champions League semi-final.
The sickest CF Montreal podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. Without further ado, let's bring in Jeremy Filosa and Sofiane Benzaza. Gentlemen, how are you?
How's it going?
All right,
great,
very,
guys.
very good. Also, Soccer Canada unveiled the men's national team squad for a friendly versus Japan, which will take place on Friday, October the 13th, in Japan, of course. Jeremy was part of that conference call with interim head coach Mauro Biello. We'll get to that because there's good news for a couple of CF Montreal players. But, gentlemen, I don't know where we start first. The fact that CF Montreal needed at least a point in that game last night or the drama that ensued after. So, Jeremy, because you're Mr. Drama, I'll ask you, where do you want to go first with this?
Let's start with the game. That's the most important thing.
All right, so let's start with the game. Let's bring up the starting 11 for CF Montreal last night, and here you have it. Sirois in goal, the 3-man back line with Waterman, with Campbell to his right, and Alvarez to his left. Of course, Corbo suspended because of cards. In front of them, the 2 defensive midfielders, Piet and Saliba. No Wanyama, of course. Broguiard is your right wing back. Lassiter is your left wing back. At the spot of number 10, behind Kyoto and Opoku, is it Bryce Duke? No. Is it Hamdi? No. It's Mathieu Chouanière. There you have it, a 3-4-1-2 for Hernan Losada's side. On the bench, Pantemis, Wanyama, Duke, Quizera, Lapalainen, Jabang, Ofer, Toy, and Ibrahim. Of course, Jules Anthony will say under the weather. Gentlemen, your thoughts on the starting 11. Sofiane, we'll start with you.
No, it was a decent starting 11. There was no drama or nothing to declare. They want to have Chouanière sort of like 10-8 box to box. They're gonna make defensive action, obviously, and they need him to feed more Kyoto, who needs someone he can play with, even though Lassiter was on his left. And I think it was a good lineup. There was no issue with the lineup. And during the game, I think they did a half-decent job when you think about it, with the drama that ensues for the end of the game.
Jeremy?
Listen, the only thing I would have done differently is maybe start Lassie on the right-hand side instead of Zach Broguiard, who's got a lot of starts in a row. That being said, I didn't mind Zach Broguiard's game yesterday, and at the end of the day, it worked out because Lassie scored late in the game. I like Lassie on the right-hand side. I don't like him on the left. I like him on the right. I would have given him a start, but aside from that, from the starting lineup, from what they have in their hands and what we already know of who the coach likes and doesn't like, it was pretty much to be expected.
So let me get this straight. Did Bryce Duke play yesterday?
I don't think he got on, did he, at the end
Correct.
of the game?
He did not get on. So must-win game or at least pick up a point. And Bryce Duke, the guy that's been the number 10 ever since he got here, and Miljevic hardly played, and Hamdi hardly played, and Sean Ray has been in the doghouse, and he's probably never going to get out, the poor kid. So Bryce Duke didn't play last night. I don't know. I mean, you need to win the game to secure a playoff spot.
But you started the year.
Please, Jeremy.
Yeah. You started the year. He said we have 4 number 10s. None of them are playing. None of them have produced anything. None of them have done anything.
That's the point I'm trying to make, Jeremy. Honestly, are you gonna don't put too much weight on what the coach says? He says 2 number 10, 4 number 10. Honestly, it's just communication. What you see is you can see a decision on the field. That's what matters. And honestly, you can have 10 number 10. It doesn't really matter. And at the end, it's more about what he's gonna do on the pitch. And Duke, there was no need for Duke during that game. He put volume up front when he was trailing, and then at the mid second half and at the half, he put all his eggs in one basket, and there was no need for Duke. They don't need more people to cross, and Duke showed with his imprecise passing that was not needed for that game, and he was right. Losada was right. As soon as he saw his 4-2-4 to finish off the game, he wants volume, quantity up front to occupy as much defenders from the Houston Dynamo side, and it worked. Honestly, it worked. There was a few chances, and at the end, they got a bit lucky, and that's what they needed.
Well, there's a few things that we got to put in perspective. You know, you could say they got a bit lucky. They deserved at least a point last night. I think they came to play. I think they played well. Did they play with the urgency that you should play for a team that absolutely has to win the games to make a play-in? We can debate that if we want. At the same time, there's something that we haven't talked about. You take a look at that Houston team that played in the U.S. Open Cup final in Miami on Wednesday night. There was turnover on that team because those guys gave everything to win that game. And so Houston was not going with their best lineup last night. Okay. But at the same time, a Houston win secures a playoff spot for them. So they were playing 2. So in the end, Lassi Lapalainen scores a huge goal. They pick up a point. Let's bring up the standings if we can. All right. Because there's only 2 games left in CF Montreal season. There's 2 games left in Chicago season, who, by the way, very convincingly beat Inter Miami yesterday without, Messi and without Alba, to name a few. Campana was out too. New York City FC, they've played the same amount of games as CF Montreal and the Chicago Fire. New York City FC has the same amount of points as CF Montreal, but of course they have 3 wins less. So they're out of a play-in spot right now. DC United lost again. It seems like, they're struggling even more than Montreal.
They're done.
They've played one more game than Montreal, and they have 1 point less. The Red Bulls have played the same amount of games as Montreal. They have 1 point less. Charlotte FC has 3 games in hand, and they have 36 points. They have 2 games less than Montreal. Now, if we can, let's bring up the remaining schedule for these teams.
It's a mess. It's a maze.
All right, here we go. Sharpie, handwriting by yours truly. Here it is. Chicago. Guys, it gets very interesting here, okay? Because Chicago's going to have 2 direct matchups with 2 teams that are vying for a playoff spot. Yeah. Charlotte and New York City FC. So, guys, there are teams here that are going to drop points. This is very important for Montreal. Montreal is not playing against any team that they're battling for a playoff spot with, which is good. The bad news is that they're playing their last game of the season versus Columbus, Wilfred Nancy, and Rudy Camacho, and they better beat Portland, because if they need to win a game in Columbus, well, they're going to lose, and Wilfred Nancy is going to hand out cigars at the end of the game. Okay. New York City FC, all right, they have 2 games left at DC United and at home versus Chicago. Once again, 2 teams that they're battling for a playoff spot with. They're going to drop points. DC United is playing 1 game versus New York City FC. Somebody's dropping points. The Red Bulls are like Montreal. They're not competing with anyone vying for a playoff spot in the East. They're playing at home versus Toronto and at Nashville. And Charlotte is at Chicago, at Inter Miami, and versus Inter Miami. So once again, those 3 games versus teams vying for a playoff spot, where right now Miami's has the least chance out of all of them, and that's why I didn't even put them up on the chart, to be honest. Not to mention that they have a bunch of players that are going to be leaving for international duty. We don't know how much Lionel Messi is going to play for Inter Miami, if he will play. So I'm putting them out for now. Are you guys putting Inter Miami out?
Well, I mean, Messi's not playing, and like you mentioned, there's an international window coming up Will he go play with Argentina? I don't think so. I mean, the way things have been going for him right now. But if Messi's out, Alba's out, I don't see them being able to come back. No, so I agree with that.
All right, guys.
Same thing.
I want to take you back to the Sick Podcast en français back on the 5th of September with a beige curtain backdrop. I was in Portugal at the time, and I'm hosting with Nilton George and Max Truman. And I talked about Victor Wanyama, and I said this.
Les gars, ça fait 2 mois qu'ils ne jouent pas. OK? C'est un secret de... Comment tu dis ça en français? C'est un secret de polichinelle, ça? C'est ça?
Ouais, t'es rendu bon. Hein?
OK, merci. C'est un secret de polichinelle que lui et le coach, là, c'est pas sur la même longueur d'onde.
Ouais, ils utilisent les data, les coachs. Victor ne doit pas être un monstre de data. Là. Quand ils enlèvent le GPS là, puis qu'ils passent dans la machine, Victor ne doit pas avoir les meilleurs chiffres au monde.
Non, mais ça, c'est sûr. Mais il faut comprendre quelque chose aussi. Les équipes de Losada, ça court beaucoup. Wanyama, il est à un stade de sa carrière que lui, ça ne court pas beaucoup. Puis, il n'est pas mieux placé pour courir beaucoup. Donc, lui, là, pour le bien de sa carrière puis le bien de son match, il doit courir moins. C'est le ballon qui doit courir plus. Donc, ils ne sont pas sur la même longueur d'onde.
So back on September 5th, I basically said Wanyama and Losada are not on the same page. Wanyama doesn't want this team to play a running style. Wanyama doesn't want this team to continue to play the style that they're playing. So him and Losada, they're not on the same page, and Wanyama hasn't played for months at that point. That was back on the 5th of September. A couple of days ago, again, en français, with Nilton and with Max Truman, again on Losada, this time on the relationship with some of his players who have questioned his tactics and his strategy thus far this season. OK, ça c'est la vue de l'hôtel.
C'est pas un green screen, t'es vraiment là.
No, ça, okay, that's the wrong one. Hold on a second. That's definitely not it. All right, okay. I think I got the wrong one, guys. But
it's okay. But we have the point, Tony. It's there was an issue, and do you guys think it hindered the club for 2 months and a half, not even having Wanyama come into the game? What do you guys think of that?
Of course, it's hindered the club. I mean, this guy is your only DP. He's a guy who's paid the most on the team. I thought he looked really good against Cincinnati. I don't know what you guys thought, but I thought he did a great job in the middle of the park. I can understand you not wanting to start him all the time. I can understand that. But to not play him at all, aside from that game where Piet was sick, I think it's vindictive. And listen, I don't want to attack Losada personally, guys, here, okay? Because I understand that the pieces that he has, there's very little to work with there, okay? So I'm not throwing the rock at Losada. But some of the stuff that we understood... Are you listening to me?
Yeah,
what are you
I'm
doing
listening. I'm listening. I got rattled with the clip.
No,
Go ahead.
Jeremy, I'm important here. I'm the guy here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Some of the stuff that we heard from players openly from DC United last year via the media, left and right, what we all read about when Losada was let go and then hired in Montreal. We're starting to hear the same kind of stories in Montreal.
A leopard doesn't change his stripes, not in his 40s. Not in his 40s. You don't. And Jeremy, to your credit, by the way, I think it's something that you brought to everyone's attention. The second he was hired, you started doing some research. You brought up the articles, and you said, oh, my God, I can't believe it. We have to replace Wilfred Nancy, and out of all the candidates, this is who they chose. But this is what his players said at DC United. And I know there were some red flags there, and you raised your hand and you said, hold on a sec, I got a problem with this. And we were told by some pretty important people, no, don't listen to everything you hear. Don't believe everything you read. It's not true. It's like this. It's like that. He's going to be fine. And everything we heard and everything we read has been manifesting itself. And when Losada said the other day to a reporter who asked if Sean Reyes still in the doghouse because of his response to being replaced after 23 minutes that he was on and he didn't like it, and maybe the little bit of attitude and that he didn't like it, Losada said, do you think I'm going to ruin a young player's career? But let's be honest, guys, none of this looks good on Losada right now. Rudy Camacho at one point didn't like the way they were playing. Boom, all of a sudden he went from center back to 6 for a game or two. Wanyama didn't like the way they were playing and talked to the coach. He's been in the doghouse for the last 3 months. I think he started one game. During that span. Bryce Duke questioned the way they were playing to the coach. He didn't start the next game.
Yeah, but Bryce Duke has other issues also.
And based on what we're hearing, like when Losada's not happy with a player, he really lets the player have it, and the players feel embarrassed. Guys, you know, people watching have to understand something. If we have all this information, if we from the outside have all this information, it's because it is bothering the players tremendously.
Of course.
And so word is getting out because the media has to bring to light what's going on, because a lot of players are bothered by this. They are embarrassed by it. They are humiliated by it. They believe that the coach is insecure in his actions. And, you know, Jeremy and Marinaro, Filosa and Marinaro, well, you know, they're the poop disturbers, but they're you know, we're reporting what's going on.
No, true. But what Samuel Piet said, the rant after Atlanta United, is the combination of all of this, and it happened at a bad time because the team didn't expect to lose that much and needed sort of the results. And there were no wins in 5 games before that game, I think, or during the after that game. So there was like the whole stress and the feather that broke the camel's back just took over. But in a sense, let's assume everything is true. In a sense, like we have no proof that was written anywhere. But let's say it's 100% true. Everything we're saying is 100% true, which is probably true. If I play devil's advocate, which I don't like it, but let's try it. Don't you think it's also a reflection of Losada trying to implement his discipline, his authority on a team that he hasn't really built at all?
Sofiane, here's the problem, and I'll give Jeremy a chance to answer as well right after. Here's the problem. Losada is going with, it's my way or the highway. I'm the boss. That stuff used to work in 1960, 70, 80, maybe the 90s, and maybe even the early 2000s. In 2023, this stuff does not work with professional athletes. Not when you're making $250,000 and they're making 1.8. Not when you're making $250,000 and they're making 500 or they're making 600. It doesn't work anymore, this stuff.
Okay, I'll let Jeremy answer.
You need to be a best friend to the players now.
Okay, fine. Jeremy, vas-y, you can go.
Guys, there's a lot of stuff that we've reported, and there's still a lot of stuff that we haven't reported on, okay?
Yeah.
That we know. As you mentioned, Tony, if players reach out to us to tell us stuff, it's because they're not happy, and in a certain way, they want stuff to come out. Right now, unfortunately, there's a lot of disagreements going on internally, a lot, between the players and the coach, between the coach and the management, okay? Not everybody's on the same page right now, and it's impeding this team from playing at a capacity that they should be able to. I'm going to give you an example, okay? Losada was not happy about Camacho leaving. He was not happy at all to lose this piece in this playoff stretch. He was basically put before the fait accompli. They told him, by the way, Camacho's gone. What? He's gone. He's sold to Columbus. So you got to understand that when the coach comes out and says, you know, well, it's normal not normal that we lost a certain team, but we're playing a team that's spending a lot of money. Look at the acquisitions they made during the transfer window. That's a way for him to say, what do I have to work with here? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but Jeremy, that's a totally different issue. Now you're deflecting from the fact that Losada and his players, anyone who questions their style of play, they believe they are in the doghouse. And based on what we've seen on the minutes they've had after they've complained or talked or tried to communicate, they are in the doghouse. This does not reflect well on Losada at all. What you're saying, that's another story. And by the way, I don't think the coach has the best players. I don't think the coach has the best players in the world, and I understand all that as well. But
it's
when you don't have the
Tony.
best players in the world, Sofiane, you need to create a family.
I agree, the cohesion, which they had at home, which Losada wouldn't be here by July if he didn't have like a 8-game winning streak at home, and Sirois being, the reincarnation of Laviachine. It's like, fine with that. He wouldn't be here by now if they didn't win at home. Okay, that's for sure, and that's part of his advantage. That of his positive that he did something good at home. I didn't believe this team to evolve this much. A lot of players evolve positively. Saliba, yes, he's very good. Even Thierry Henry saw him and he said that guy's gonna be something. He has something, but you need to evolve them, and play them. And
okay, so everything you say is true, but I want to say, are you better at your job right now than you were when you started?
Yeah, experience.
So you know why Saliba's better at his job? And I like the kid. Yeah, I told you he was the best player in the reserve team last year. Yes, you want to know why he's better at his job? Because he goes to work every day, plays.
Exactly. But the thing is, like the comparison is good with Saliba. You cannot use the Saliba example and then ignore the Duke example. Duke can talk, but he hasn't delivered in some things he's been doing on the pitch. I would be mad too if I was a coach.
Yeah, but hold on a second. You know,
but if I go play about player,
I don't want to diminish Saliba here for a second, okay? Because you're talking about Duke and saying that Duke has not convinced. I agree with you, okay?
Well, has been too erratic to be able to impose himself as
Nathan Saliba started the first game of the season as a 10.
Yes,
okay? But at the end of the season, there's 2 games left. He has 0 goals and 0 assists.
Which is fine.
Which is fine?
For Saliba?
Well, he started the season as a 10, the first game. He's played every game now over the last, I don't know, the last 12 or 13. He's played them all. He's got 0 goals and 0 assists. So is he getting better? Yes.
Yes, yeah, but he's not.
He's playing every game. When I started on the radio, I was not very good.
I agree.
My 20th show, I was better than I was on my first show.
Okay, I agree. But what I'm trying to get to, sorry if I was too vague in the beginning, is that it's a cake with many complex layers. In the sense, you have to look at the team being in a transition. I say it again. This team has gone from being a top MLS team out of nowhere in quotation mark, to have to rebuild, even though they have many players that stayed, but some key players left, transfer market, etc. With a new coaching staff, with a sparring director that's still trying to do the same formula, but doesn't have maybe the budget to repeat it or the same opportunities. So I think I'm not giving Losada an excuse or his staff. It's more a reason to explain part of the lack of cohesiveness in some aspects of the game.
Guys.
He has things at fault. But all I'm saying, guys, I think it's in between the reality, the truth, and I think players could be doing better also. Even though Losada could be making players play better or have a more crazy style of play, which I don't know what the style of play is yet. I have no idea.
Go ahead.
All the problems that have occurred this year, okay? At the end of the day, if you look back up the root of the tree or down the root of the tree, there's always one common denominator. The owner doesn't spend enough money for all of this to gel together. Everyone, if Wanyama was making 1.8, but you had 3 players making 3 and 5 million, it wouldn't be such a big deal that Wanyama would be on the bench. If the coach had, if Bryce Duke that's making 150,000, we didn't have these massive expectations towards him, we wouldn't be talking about him as a disappointment at this moment. If Losada had players to play with, maybe.
Yes.
On that note, Arcadio Marcuzzi the other night went on a rant. Of course, Arcadio made his way into the media, working with Jeremy on EMFC Radio. And by the way, props to Jeremy, because I'm not the only one who was saying that there was a problem between Losada and Wanyama. And ever since Wanyama questioned the tactics, that he felt like he was in the doghouse, Jeremy's been singing the same tune on IMFC Radio for just as long, if not longer. Okay. But Arcadio broke out with Jeremy in the media, then went to work in the CF Montreal Media Relations Department communications team as one of the assistants. Was there for a couple of years, resigned from his job probably, I don't know, give or take 3 months ago or whatever it was, and now has started to basically vent on social media, basically saying, if you you keep pulling the elastic and you keep pulling the elastic at one point will have no give and it's going to break. And he talked about the fact that there are good people working for this club, but unfortunately, they don't spend in basically pretty much so many important departments that in the end, they just don't have the resources and it collapses.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the results also don't have the staff that was already established to be able to help them out. Also, I agree. Like
well,
I
they don't
said,
have the staff because they lowered the resources. So if you want to spend less money, what do? You don't go out and get coaches from outside. You end up with a coach from your academy. Okay, let's bring him there. We don't have to pay him anything more.
But a whole staff left the club to go to Columbus for a reason that we know. A whole bunch of players left the club because the club made them better, and they got better with the club with the same staff and the same sporting director. All I'm saying is that Olivana is trying to recreate the same formula, doesn't have the same budget. I agree. At the end, it's always the owner's fault and the budget. Fine. We can say that as many times as we want to. But they spent last year and 2 years ago when they got Georgi Malvich, and they spent Gam and Tam to get Kamal Miller, Alison Johnson.
I hate to break it to you. I don't know if you've joined the club of 5 who has been drinking the Kool-Aid and basically working as on behalf of the club here. But here's the deal, okay? Well, why not? I'm going to tell you why. You really think that after last season, even though they lost their coaches and they lost some coaches and they lost some players, you really think that this team is going to be happy with not making the playoffs this year? And by the way, I still think they're in the driver's seat. And you know what? I believe they're, for what it's worth, it's up to the players. If I'm Losada, let me just tell you, if I'm Losada, I have a meeting with my players and I say, if I messed up at points this season, I apologize. If I screwed up, I apologize. If I made it get the better of me and I made some things personal because I felt questioned and maybe I lacked a little bit of security and some issues, I apologize. But you know what? I'm turning the page. I'm going to be a better coach. You guys are going to be better players. Our fan base wants us to make the playoffs. Everyone is against us. The world is against us. They don't think we can get in with our team. They don't think they can get in with our players. They don't think they can get in with our roster. Let's prove everyone wrong. I'm trying to rally the troops. It's desperation at this point. But
classic
Sofiane, who are saying this whole rebuild thing, you think that if they miss the playoffs, that they're going to say, we missed the playoffs, but this was part of the plan? You think that?
No, they will never say that. They don't believe that. By statistics, they have 60% of chance to make the playoffs if you couldn't play in. 45%.
Not anymore.
No, but like at the beginning of the season,
I think it was 45. Yeah.
I mean, like 19 out of 15, 60% in preseason, and 40%, 45. You just take the top 7. Okay, this is statistically you should be going in, but they didn't. I knew they took into account there would be a big roller coaster ride, up and downs with this team because they're a rebuild of key players they don't have anymore and a staff that's brand new. Guys. Let's be serious. I'm not excusing. I'm not giving an excuse. I'm explaining part of it.
They choose to be in a rebuild. They choose to go up and down because at the end of the year, you knew that money was coming in from the sale of all those players. If you sign 3-star players in January, we don't have these problems.
I agree, Jeremy.
Choose to be there, and therefore, none of us have to make any excuses for them. They get what they deserve. That's it. That's all. These bullshit excuses. I'm sorry. Bullshit excuses we start the year on the road all the time.
Yes, I agree with that.
Whose fault is it that we still don't have a stadium that's adequate to be able to play outside? Is it their fault or is it our fault? It's their fault. So stop it. Enough with the excuses. I'm fed up. I can't take it anymore.
I agree with the repetitive excuses. It's really too much. It's kind of repetitive. I agree. But okay, guys.
Jeremy, don't make this affect your health.
They deserve zero excuses.
Sofiane,
this is the leeway that they deserve. Zero.
If they put heating in the field, hold on a second, Sofiane. If they put heating in the field, they don't have to start the first 6 games on the road. He's right there.
Yeah, he's right. That's another type of investment. It's the difference between doing this and getting 3 DPs.
But you know, we're talking about as if this team belongs to the poorest man on earth who's hanging out in a corner and he doesn't have $1 in his pocket. But what are we gonna start a GoFundMe page on the podcast, right? You want to start a GoFundMe page?
We've been doing this for like 10 years. Found this club in MLS for 12 years. It's always the same thing. At the end, it's just a we know that.
Listen, they promised an MLS Cup within 5 years. That was 2 years. That was 7 years ago.
The sporting structure was non-existent at that time. It depended on stuff on Nick DeSantis making miracles and also making many mistakes. Let's be honest.
Okay, we got 4 or 5 minutes left in the podcast.
We could talk until we're blue in the face. All the problems go back to one solution. That's it. That's all. And they don't deserve. I'm sorry. They don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. They don't deserve
no benefit of the doubt, Jeremy. I'm talking about reasons. It's not excuses. I'm gonna say it again. Okay, I'll say it for the last time because I've been saying it all year long. The years that we have with Henry and Nancy, have been an exception inside what we saw in this club in MLS.
Absolutely.
So right now we're back to the same old business. Rémi Garde, up and down. They don't got Jimmy Briand. They have to take Ruti. Blah blah blah. It's all the same thing. Okay. What we had was an exception, and we had this miracle run of 2-3 years of decent soccer.
Guys,
and now we're back at
okay.
step
But
zero.
Sofiane, even if you're not investing the big bucks and bringing in Drogba or Divayo anymore, the players that you do bring in, they're going to have to end up performing better than Toy, Torres, Thorkelson, Struna, Miljevic, Maciel, Kiza, Johnson, Ibrahim, Hamdi, Hurtado, Basong, and Iliadis. Okay?
I agree.
With all due respect to all of them. Now, yesterday on social media, we have to tackle it. We got 3 minutes left. On social media, yesterday, Victor Wanyama's wife with this message.
Mamma mia.
Lies. The disagreement was about Losada's style of play and formation. This is what got Losada mad. His ego won't let him take criticism. All right. So
who's she talking to? Who is she tweeting at?
She is airing her dirty laundry. All right. And she wants to come clear, and she wants everyone to know. Not so sure that hubby would be happy with what she did, but she did it. Okay. I'm surprised that this is not a bigger story in Quebec. Like, this is, listen to me. They have one designated player on this team. I think he started one game in the last 2.5 to 3 months. Yeah. He has been in the doghouse, and we're hearing that he's been in the doghouse ever since he questioned the tactics and the style of play. Okay? Mm-hmm. And nobody is talking about this. What is wrong here?
But nobody talks about anything.
Well, nobody.
If this guy was the Canadian player,
I'm pretty sure c'est podcast, même c'est radio, Couscous Piri, Can Football Club.
He's talking about mainstream media.
Il faut le dire. Say it who? Say who? Yeah. Always say like in general terms.
Guys, listen.
The little podcasters are talking about the real issues, but then again, we're not really journalists. Okay, go
exactly.
ahead.
But to say, like, I watched on television mainstream media reports on the day that the Miljevic story broke, and they're talking about who played well defensively. Nobody talks about Miljevic. You understand what I'm saying? Like, what planet are we living on? I have no idea. But, this is a story, definitely. Do we have a minute or two to talk about Team Canada?
Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to let you guys know I spoke to Biello this morning. I was the only reporter from Quebec on the conference call. Again, not good. Okay.
But, are you a real journalist, Jeremy? Are you a real one? I'm not sure.
I am. I'm a real journalist.
Okay, just checking.
Okay. I was the only one to ask him. We actually have a head coach now that speaks French. Porca la miseria. Nobody was there to ask him any questions in French except for me.
Good for you.
What I want to tell you is that
you're my man.
Expect Samuel Piette to get a much bigger role now on that team. Mauro Biello loves Samuel Piette. Every time I speak to him, the smile comes on his face. And this morning I asked him about it again, and he said, we don't have any other players of that type in our midfield. Expect Samuel Piette to pass in front of Marc-Anthony Kaye. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But he's going to have a bigger role on that team starting
Every
now.
coach loves Samuel Piette because he gives you 120%. Yeah. He goes to war for him, for the coaching staff, for his teammates. He gives you an honest effort every time. He is a player who disrupts the play. You cannot have all elegance in the midfield. You need somebody to do the dirty work, a la Gattuso, to break up plays. Samuel Piette is Canada's version of Gennaro Gattuso.
Exactly.
That's exactly what he is.
I'll tell you one thing. If Biello was the head coach at the World Cup, there's no way Samuel Piette would have spent the 3 games on the bench.
And if we can keep the same color, let's use Ambrosini because he's blonde also. Very similar player.
Yes.
Ambrosini is
taller.
Yes, but come on, guys.
Go ahead.
Give me something. He has long hair. What's interesting with the midfield is that we talk about Kaye. Kaye is reviving his career in New England very well. So it's good for Canada, more competition, and Piette is being pushed by his national team coach, who's from Quebec, from Montreal. So it's a good thing for Canada.
And Samuel Piette gave a push last week in the media to Mauro Biello to bring Matthew Choinière on the national team. Yeah, exactly. And Choinière is there. I don't know if we have the list of Canadian players that are going to play this game versus Japan on Friday, on October 18th, but there you have it. Okay. Goalkeepers, Borian, Crepeau, and St. Clair. Unfortunately, Sirois not there. Defenders, Arakube, Bombito, Cornelius, Montreal. Davies, De Fougerel, Johnston, Laria, Miller, Victoria. Midfielders, Choinière, Eustachio, Kone, Osorio, Payton, and Piette. Attackers, Brim, David, Hoylett, Laren, and Miller. There you have it.
It's just too bad that they're only playing one game, guys, because Nations League is going to start in November. I mean, and again, they're getting there. I think only Monday or Tuesday in Japan. There's going to be the time change. It's so unfortunate that they're not giving them like everything that they need to be able to.
The talent that this squad has deserves more games, deserves more gala games, more prestige games, even smaller games to play. You need to try your players. You need to try formation. Especially Bielo's a new coach. He might be the permanent coach for 2-3 years. Even if it's interim only for 6 months, we need to see players play, have rotation, have styles. Like Canada is losing so much time. They're using in dog years. How many times they're doing it? Voila.
All right,
I gotta go, guys.
Yeah. So go in ending the game on the 13th. So they'll miss the game versus Columbus.
No. They'll be back.
They'll be back for the game versus Columbus.
They'll be back. Yeah.
They have to take economy.
All right. Okay. Jeremy Filosa, thank you very much. Why don't you go? I'm going to take two or three quick comments while you're going. Thank you for your time. Very much appreciated. Okay. Couple of comments here. Let's bring them in. The game, pardon me. The game versus Columbus is the 21st. What am I thinking? They're off because they're playing that game. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Jordan, not for nothing, guys, but TFC proves that money doesn't solve everything. That's a great point. He's absolutely right, because when Jeremy was saying they have to spend money, you got to spend it wisely. Okay. Next. Comment coming in from Jordan again, I think. Kyoto needs more playing time now that he's fit. He looked good last night. More shots in that game than we had all season. Yes, everyone knows that they're a better team with Kyoto on the field. Others.
That's the story of Kyoto. That's the thing.
Jeremy says, great. Now we got to wait till decision day to see if we make the playoffs or not, and then lose in the first game of the playoffs. Listen, I got to tell you this. I said what I had to say. I still think they're in a good position compared to some other teams. They don't have direct confrontation in terms of the playoffs. But I said this then, that when Samuel Piette spoke, it was not the frustration of one game, even though they tried to do a little bit of damage control. Everyone in the media after, with Renard, with Losada and Piette coming out saying, no, it's because secouer l'équipe and this and that. And Piette said it was one game. We agreed that it was one game. That was all damage control, what you heard, okay? There are a lot of players who question the way they're playing once again. They believe that they don't like it. They believe they've been in the doghouse. If I'm Losada, once again, I do this. I give a mea culpa. All right. Mea culpa to the players and try and play the whole everyone against us. Nobody believes in us. Everyone says that our roster is not good enough to make the playoffs. Everyone says that our players are not good enough to make the playoffs. Let's go out there and show them. Let's do it for ourselves. Let's do it for the city. Let's do it for the fan base. Mea culpa by me. Starting today, I'll be a better coach. Let's go. I promise. Open door policy. Everyone come in. Let's discuss. Let's do it together. That's what I would do. I think if that happens, I think they beat Portland. I think they make the playoffs. If that doesn't happen, at that point, all bets are off. You can watch the Sick Podcast CF Montreal Talk on YouTube. It's absolutely free. Subscribe to our channel. And, of course, follow us on Twitter at SickPod CFMTL. For Jeremy Filosa of 98.5 FM and EMFC Radio, and Sofiane Benzaza, he's still there, the guy in the red shirt of Couscous Piri Piri. This is the Sick Podcast CF Montreal Talk. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast CF Montreal Talk on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.